Welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Getting Sketchy Live. We're back this week after a brief hiatus last week. I'd like to welcome everyone who's watching this live on YouTube, of course. And first of all, I just need to tell you what Getting Sketchy is all about. If you don't know, Getting Sketchy is a live show here on YouTube where either myself or my good friend and fellow artist and art teacher, Ashley Hurst, tries to create a drawing for you guys in 45 minutes. Of course, 45 minutes is not a very long time to create a drawing, so it's a sketch, and Ashley and I are both pretty sketchy individuals, so you put all that together and you have Getting Sketchy. Now, tonight's drawing is going to be on Ashley. He's going to be creating the drawing, and it should be a real challenge, but let's check in with Ashley over there. Ashley, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. It's good to see you, and it's good to see you guys out there in YouTube land. We didn't have a sketchy start, but we almost did, because Matt and I haven't seen each other in 2 weeks, and we were just in here talking, and I looked at the clock, and it was 6:30 already. So I'm glad that we're on time, and I'm glad you're on time too. Tonight we're going to continue with drawing pairs, then drawing objects that kind of go together or fit together. And you guys had some great ideas, some great suggestions. But for tonight, I chose a pair of objects that actually belong to one of my grandmothers, Salt and Pepper Shaker. And I'd like to give a special shout out to my other grandmother who's watching tonight.
Well, hello to her too. I didn't realize that was taking place, but hello to everyone, including Ashley's grandmother. Now, Ashley's going to be working with white charcoal and black paper tonight. If you don't have that same combination of material, that's okay. You can watch and follow along until you have that combination of materials, or you can just use a different drawing medium. Of course, you're going to still be exercising those same artistic muscles that you would with any other drawing medium, of course, because drawing is about observation. Now, after this broadcast, we're going to be heading over to thevirtualinstructor.com and continuing with our current live lesson series, which Ashley is leading as well. And he's creating a still life oil painting. So if you can join us for that, that would be great. You do have to be a member of our program. And of course, our membership includes a variety of drawing and painting courses on a variety of subjects and mediums. We also have the weekly live lessons, which I just mentioned, and all of our live lessons are recorded and stored in our vault. So we have live lessons going all the way back to 2012, believe it or not. That's a lot of live lessons.
Oh, yeah.
There are weekly critiques, which are part of the Members Minute, and there's also a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers. Now, if you want to check out our program, you can. Everyone starts out with a free trial for 7 days. There's a link in the description below if you want to check out our program. It's absolutely fantastic. I know that I'm a little bit biased, but there have been many, many years of work that have gone into the program, and it really is a remarkable program. So if you want to continue with your drawing and painting instruction, of course, the membership program at thevirtualinstructor.com is an excellent way to do that. Now, if you want to just check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free, you can do so as well. There's a link in the description below, and clicking on that link will take you to another page where you can put in your email address and you'll get access to 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free. Now, if you're new to the YouTube channel, or if you haven't done so yet, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Because we do this Getting Sketchy thing in seasons. This is the last episode where we're actually going to be drawing. We're going to have one more episode in this season, which will be next week, where we talk about the drawings that we created.
A bonus episode.
Yeah, but still on this channel, I still produce videos that are put on a regular basis on a variety of drawing and painting subjects and mediums, of course. All right, that was quite a mouthful. Oh, one more last thing. If you are joining us live on YouTube, there's a chat box. You can ask questions. You can make comments. They don't have to be about what we're talking about tonight. They can be anything art related. And as those questions and comments come up, Ashley or I will of course, address those. Now, if you put it in all capital letters, that will help me see it amongst all the other comments, because I'm going to be manning the chat box this evening. All right, I think that was the last thing I need to say. It looks like you're ready over there, so let's go ahead and switch over.
All right. So I went ahead and included a value scale at the top. A couple of, I guess the last time I drew, maybe 3 weeks ago, I did make a value scale, and it's helpful, I think, for us to be able to communicate during the drawing about what I'm looking at. So I'll look at a certain section of the salt shaker or the pepper shaker, and then I'll compare it to my value scale, and that'll give me an idea of how hard to press with my white charcoal. Of course, white charcoal is relatively forgiving. It does erase well, but it doesn't sort of smear or dust off as easily as vine charcoal. It stays put a little bit better than that, somewhere between, I guess, vine charcoal and compressed black charcoal. So I'm going to start with just a regular pencil. It's a number 2 pencil. It's a writing pencil by Ticonderoga. It's a good pencil brand in any case. And then I'll pretty quickly be switching to General's white charcoal pencils. And I've got 2 of those in case I have a blowout. And I've got a variety of erasers that I may use tonight. I always have some kind of a pink rubber eraser. Again, this is the School Smart brand, but they're all pretty much the same as far as the pink rubber erasers. Now, the kneaded eraser that I'll use tonight is also by General's. Okay, so it's the same company that's made the white charcoal pencil. I think it's a superior kneaded eraser, so it's my preferred brand. And then also, I have been convinced over the last few weeks that I need my own electric eraser. I've been borrowing Matt's, and it has made a difference in my drawings here on Getting Sketchy. You know, I can erase out just as well with a pink rubber eraser, but it makes the edges of the eraser marks a little bit soft, and they have to be cleaned up afterwards. So this is a real time saver. It doesn't really make it easier, just saves a little bit of time. And since there will be a timer on the screen, I welcome that. All right, I guess we're ready to get started. Let's see. I would mention before we do start the timer that the salt and pepper shakers are cubes. They're glass cubes. I thought that glass and metal would be a good subject for white charcoal on black paper. And then additionally, the cubes are, or were, I photographed them myself. This is not a photograph that you can find online, but you can find it here, and you can use it as long as you want to from here. But the cubes are in perspective a little bit. The camera angle was slightly above, so all of the vertical edges of the 2 cubes are slightly not vertical, and I think that adds a little bit of, full stop. I think it's just more dynamic when you can take a subject that has a lot of horizontal and vertical edges and get them into a diagonal somehow, whether it's by looking up at them or looking down at them, or just tilting your picture plane a little bit. So that was my intention when I photographed the salt and pepper shaker. And then, of course, there's a little bit of a scale relationship that creates some space. Even though there's no environment, there's no background, the 2 objects being the same shape but different in apparent size creates space. And then the overlapping, having one object tucked slightly behind the other, also helps to create a little bit of extra space, which is something I wanted to try to do as much as I could, given that there's not much of there is in fact no environment or no background.
Okay, and just real quick, there's a couple of questions that we'll get to in just a minute. Mm-hmm. But do you want me to zoom in a little bit closer there on your...
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, let's see if I can do that from here.
There we go. Let's just try to keep the value scale a little bit on the screen.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah, let's go with that. All right, super.
And there were a couple of people who seem really sad that they're thinking this is the last episode of the season. We're going to do one more episode next week. We're not going to do any drawing next week. We're just going to talk about the drawings from this season. Then we're just going to take a few weeks off for doing these live broadcasts on YouTube. We'll continue with the live lessons, of course, but then we'll come back and we'll do another season of Getting Sketchy. So don't be too depressed. Just a short break there. And let's see. Orion Nebula asked, does the electric eraser damage the paper? And the answer to that is yes, if you get too crazy with it. But
you don't want to keep it in the same place for very long at all. You got to keep it moving.
Yeah, and you'd have to get really crazy with this particular electric eraser. In college, one of my professors had an electric eraser that would take your skin off.
Oh, man.
That one would probably damage your paper, but this one is not so strong.
Speaking of paper, I should have mentioned this is Canson Colorline paper, and so it's got some weight to it. It's probably about 80 or 90 pound paper. So it doesn't have a really strong tooth, but it's pretty durable. So I think it can stand up to the electric eraser. Great question. All right, I've cheated a little bit.
You did cheat. I need to turn on the timer.
Well, Matt wasn't
ready?
looking. While he was talking, I put 2 lines on the page. Yeah. Go ahead and start the timer.
All right, 45 minutes.
All right, so these 2 lines, and you may have seen that I had my pencil held up. You can't tell from your camera angle, but this is vertical, and I was just tilting it in front of the photograph that I have as a reference and checking the gesture or the angle at which these salt and pepper shakers are sort of resting. And so the salt shaker leans a little to the left, and the pepper shaker leans a little to the right. All right, I'll go ahead and get started with some shapes here. We'll start kind of loose. Remember, you can draw with any material that you have. It doesn't have to be white charcoal. And if you have a white colored pencil, you can go ahead and give that a shot.
So I'm just going to make a little bit of an observation here. These salt and pepper shakers are actually very clearly in 3-point perspective.
That's right.
And 3-point perspective is the trickiest version of linear perspective. And I'm willing to bet that Ashley's just going to use those first 2 lines that he made there as a guideline and not get wrapped up in vanishing points. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. We don't need the vanishing points for this because we're not making this up, right? I like to use the vanishing points when I'm creating a drawing more from my imagination. I need those vanishing points to keep me straight. But this I can do from direct observation. That doesn't mean we couldn't find the vanishing points. You know, we could follow these lines way down off of the page and find that third vanishing point. Usually the third vanishing point is really far below or really far above your page. So we won't need those tonight.
And then the other 2 vanishing points would be off the picture plane on either side.
That's right. That's right. They'll actually be pretty far. They would be pretty far off too. So if we were using linear perspective and vanishing points, the drawing would look a little bit more like this. You would see these lines. And that's I love to draw in linear perspective, and I know it's been brought up in the chat to maybe do a getting sketchy on linear perspective, so that's a possibility. But when you're using a ruler and dots, the drawing goes pretty slow at first.
And for those of you who are interested, at thevirtualinstructor.com, I think we've probably got 8 or 9 lessons on linear perspective in different forms and different formats. We've done a few live lesson series on linear perspective, and there's also quite a bit of information included in the courses on linear perspective as well.
Now, these objects do have the challenge of symmetry. Several of my objects have had the symmetry problem to solve this season, and so I'll probably move these little shapes around a millimeter or 2 several times before we settle on them. These little guys here that sort of look like Gothic arches. I like symmetric objects. I am attracted to them, but they are. You do have to take your time with matching the 2 sides or making sure that they look like they would match. Okay,
Simon asked, and he asked this for everyone, is a hexagon shape good for drawing eyes? And I'll let you keep drawing and think about that.
If you don't answer, I'm going to start drawing an eye over here in the margin and lose time.
Well, I feel like I'm hindering you a little bit on the time there, but
not at all.
With an eye, you need to keep in mind that an eye is actually a sphere inside of a socket, an eye socket, and of course it's covered up with eyelids. So you need to keep in mind that the form of an eye is actually a sphere, and it's just covered with a couple of flaps. And of course we see the opening. So I would start actually when you draw an eye with maybe a circle for the pupil, and I'm sorry, the iris, and then go with another circle inside of that for the pupil, and then build out the rest of the eye from there. So draw the eye, the top eyelid and the bottom eyelid, but all the time be keeping in mind that the eye is a sphere. So I'm not sure a hexagon shape would be a good shape to start off with the eyes, because that in that case you're actually just concentrating on the eyelids.
Something I like to remind my own students is to look hard at eyes. A lot of times, we think of them as football shapes, but the bottom eyelid is a lot of times less round than the top. So look really close. A hexagon would probably be okay, but you would want to make the bottom of the hexagon the angle's more obtuse than the top of the hexagon.
Flatter,
so I got
yeah.
6 sides here, but the angles up here are just a little bit tighter. So it's the way I think of the eye.
Good demonstration of different.
So you can use
different
round
eyes.
line. I like to draw with straight lines, so I think a hexagon would be okay as long as it's sort of an irregular hexagon, I guess. All right, so I just want to study these shapes for just a minute. We don't have, it is a sketch. Remember, we're getting sketchy tonight, so not getting perfect. So it needs to be pretty close before we move on to the white charcoal. So I've got a little bit of, I've got 39 minutes, so I feel like I've got a minute or two to just slow down for just a second. Check my angles. I think this one could be slightly more extreme. Okay. And I guess it would help to put a few more marks in the tops of my pepper shakers just as a guide to follow when I start shading. I'm not going to be too, fussy over the ridges in the salt and pepper shaker's top. I'm going to just try to draw those in a painterly way. Maybe do a little bit of erasing out in there.
Okay, Go Surf, I must have missed this question. Can you talk a little bit more about vanishing points? Vanishing point is a point that is used, it's usually a dot that's used in a perspective drawing, a linear perspective drawing, where objects disappear completely if they were going off into the distance. So a vanishing point, you can imagine if those two lines...
There's almost one in the picture plane, but just not quite.
If that salt shaker was a rectangle that a rectangular form that continued off in space, there would be a point when you couldn't see it anymore, and that's a vanishing point. And in 3-point perspective, there are 3 vanishing points. There's 2-point perspective, which uses, as you might guess, 2 vanishing points. And then there's 1-point perspective, which is the most simple form of perspective, and it uses 1 vanishing point. And these are just, linear perspective is just a tool that you can use to help you draw objects in space so that they are the way that we see them in reality. And most of the time, you're going to use linear perspective when you're drawing from your imagination. But you can also keep in mind linear perspective when you're drawing things from observation.
Like that, and that's what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm trying to remember that these vanishing points exist out there, and even though I don't have them drawn off on the table, I can still imagine about where they're supposed to be. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I think it was the Italian artist Brunelleschi that first noticed the convergence of parallel lines in space. So
yeah, I think you're right.
I think that I like to say that linear perspective wasn't invented, it was just noticed. It's always been there. Sight has always worked this way. Finally, someone just sort of defined what was happening. All right, let's go ahead and switch to the white charcoal pencil. Now, I've got my value scale up here, and I'll tell you, this is the hardest one. These light values are super, I guess I said light pressure values. They're actually pretty dark values. Ooh, we're gonna make that mistake a few times. It's been about a year since I've worked on black paper. So anyway, the darker values require very light pressure, and this white charcoal, it just wants to come right off the stick. I mean, it wants to come off about like a number 2 every single time. So you just have to be careful with your pressure if you are working with a white charcoal along with me.
And that's the tricky thing about using a white medium on a black surface is you have to think in reverse. You're actually adding the highlights and lighter values and leaving the shadows or erasing out the shadows, which when we work with a dark medium on a white surface, for example, we're adding the shadows and the middle values and leaving open the highlights or removing the material to create highlights. So it takes some shift in thinking. It's almost like drawing on a blackboard. If any of you guys out there know what that is, it's a little bit tricky. You can't just draw like you normally would with a regular drawing pencil because you'd end up with a bunch of white outlines and light colored shadows, which doesn't really make a lot of sense.
So I do have my kneaded eraser, and because it is challenging to put down those darker values, that's where the kneaded eraser comes in. So we may have to shade or add value a little bit heavy and then pull it back with our kneaded eraser. That's one of our processes here.
Now, are you a big user of the salt and pepper?
I use a lot of salt and pepper.
Do you
That's right.
really?
Salt and pepper fixes everybody's cooking.
Oh, I don't know if you should say that with one of your grandmothers.
No, not anybody in my family.
Oh, of course.
They all cook with the right amount of salt and pepper.
Huh, there you go.
You know, and I say that because a lot of people cook with less salt, you know, due to just low sodium diets, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, my doctor's going to tell me it's time to back off the salt, and I'm not looking forward to that day.
Well, I never really have been a big salt and pepper user.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, I like salty foods, and but I just don't really add salt that much.
Yeah, salt is something that I crave. You know, some people crave sweets.
Yeah, and I'm a sweet person.
Okay, and I think I crave the salty things.
But I do like eating salty things.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
So these first values that are going down, they feel really, really bright right now on this black paper. But once we get some of these guys in there, you know, number 1 way over here on the light side of our close to a number 1, then hopefully this value will make good sense in context. So I would say that I'm probably working with value 2 or 3 right now, just around the empty spaces. And on the actual top of this salt shaker, I'm going to go ahead and shade it in all a little bit, except for areas that look black, and then we can build up the gray, or build up the white from there in layers. So there is a dark area in here that is, you may notice it as the shape of a person. That's me.
I do feel like this combination of media is a relatively quick medium to use, or
that's what I'm banking on.
A relatively quick combination of media to use.
Yeah, it can be. The black paper does some of the work for us.
But I do know what you mean about the white charcoal pencil. It's harder to produce a range with the white charcoal pencil because it's so soft.
Right.
Compared to working with like a 4B pencil.
It all just wants to go down white.
Yeah, it's very soft.
So that's okay. That's what the kneaded eraser is for. Okay. It's all pretty homogeneous right now. We'll continue to work this way and then look for more values. So I'm really working with mostly just one value right now. I'm going to go ahead and get a few marks back here in the pepper shaker where I feel like the value is similar. This is a bright spot. It's a little bit of a reflection coming back into the pepper shaker. Now, you may have noticed I used my eraser and just kind of went over the drawing a little bit with the broad side of the eraser just to remove some excess graphite before I started, and actually removed a little bit of my drawing. So be careful with that.
Now, one thing that I'll just caution folks on is when you're using white charcoal with graphite, keep in mind that white charcoal has a difficult time covering graphite.
Yeah.
So you don't want to make a lot of graphite marks initially before applying the white charcoal over the top. And I've done lots of drawings combining graphite with white charcoal and using the graphite for the darker values on gray paper. And you just have to be aware of the fact that you probably need to get some of your highlights established early on in the drawing process before you get too carried away with the graphite applications. So if you're doing this drawing at home, just keep that in mind. So you want to be really light with your graphite applications.
All right. Let's go ahead and get some lighter areas in here just to see how these grays are going to respond, how they're going to act.
So now you're going to really see how value is relative. Value is the darkness or lightness of a color, and a lot of times we understand values based on the values that are around them. So when Ashley was talking earlier about how those lighter values seemed really strong and bold, now that he's putting heavy pressure on the pencil, we can see they weren't as bright and bold as we first thought them to be.
It's bringing them back a little bit. Bringing them back a little bit. Now, this paper I chose, the Colorline paper, is relatively smooth compared to the Metan's paper, but you can still see a pretty decent tooth in the page so far.
Yeah, when you mentioned earlier it was a pretty smooth paper, I noticed in the value scale you can see a pretty defined texture.
Actually,
there.
a little bit more than I thought I would get from this when I felt it earlier today.
But you know, when I work on black paper, I usually use the Artigan paper by Strathmore, and it is super smooth. And the white charcoal pencil still makes a textured mark. So it might have something to do with the white charcoal pencil too.
It could be.
Which we've talked about many times is not really white charcoal.
Right.
It's called white charcoal, but it's kind of a trade secret as to what material it actually is.
We believe, or some people on the internet that we've referenced, I guess, believe that it's made of calcium carbonate.
Calcium carbonate, that's right.
All right.
Yeah, someone made a comment. I keep forgetting which one of you is Ashley and which one is Matt. And Ernest says Ashley's the one doing the drawing today. And then Phil chimes in and says Matt has the salt and pepper beard and Ashley is shiny on top.
And I apologize for all that shine. My head's been tanning over this summer.
It doesn't look shiny
and it's getting
me.
shinier and shinier.
It really doesn't. Does it get shinier with more sun?
I think so, or with less hair, and that's still happening. So I'm going to blame the sun, but it probably is just less hair. It falls out, just so you guys know, I know you're interested in male pattern baldness. It falls out in stages, so like there'll be a period of like hair drop, and then it backs off for a while.
Really?
Yeah. It's not consistent. I can't wait to dig out this little dark line in here with the electric eraser.
The eraser.
Yeah.
Oh,
I covered it up on purpose so that we could find it again. I think that'll be fun. All right, now this salt in here is taking the form of the shaker. A little bit, which is a cube. So it kind of has three sides: a lighter side, a medium side, and a darker side. And it's not entirely, distinct. There's, I guess, a little bit of slope to the medium side in places. So it's got a little bit of variety in there.
Yeah, what's interesting is on the right side of the salt mound inside of the salt shaker, you can see highlights in there. It's almost like the light's being pulled in there and intensified
as it goes through.
Yeah.
Kind of like burning ants with a magnifying glass a little bit. Something
like, just like that.
I don't
That's
do.
That's what I was thinking.
I've never done that, but I have. I think I caught my son doing that one time.
Oh, no.
A burner of ants.
Now I'll kill some black widow spiders, but I don't know about the ants. What was I going to say there about I remember. This is such a challenging subject, because of the reflection that you're getting from not only the glass but also the metal pieces.
You're right.
So This is a highly reflective surface, and also the transparency of the glass there also presents a lot of challenges. And there's some distortion that's happening there as well.
There's just all kinds of stuff going on in here.
You can see the imperfection in the bottom portion of the salt shaker.
Right, like in the glass, you mean? Yeah, there's a little bit of a, because we're drawing, all of my objects are being drawn larger than life. It's still a small drawing, but these salt and pepper shakers, I mean, it is like a 1 inch tall cube. They're very, very tiny. So that's been one of my goals this season, is to draw small objects that come in pairs and to draw them just slightly larger than life.
Okay, Orion Nebula asks, how do you sharpen the charcoal pencil? And you just use a
And just use a regular pencil sharpener.
You can
This is generals.
You can also use, a knife
one?
and sharpen it with a sandpaper pad.
Mm-hmm.
Which I might have a charcoal pencil in here that's sharpened that way. I'll see.
All right.
Maybe not. All my charcoal pencils are dull. Well, I like the strong highlight you added in the opening there on the salt shaker. There at the
In
top.
here,
In that opening.
yeah, we'll be looking for more of those tiny little highlights as we go. That's going to be the
fun
key.
stuff.
All right, that's going to be the key to this one. This little guy here is giving me fits right now.
Well, I'll also point out, I know you're not going to be using a blending stomp for this.
Yeah,
But
I thought about it.
You can use a blending stomp with this to kind of get those smoother transitions.
Yeah. Could always have you throw me one
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've got a bunch.
if we feel like it'll improve the drawing. Sometimes I avoid that and getting sketchy just for time.
Yeah, but
But,
you're moving quick tonight.
we'll see,
This
yeah.
is a pretty quick,
We might
medium. I'm just
be
going to
able
go
to
ahead
use a stump.
and bring you one. If you
Okay.
want to use it, you can.
Yeah. Super. Thank you.
Now, I keep my blending stomps separated for use
Black
with,
and white.
with darker,
Yeah.
light, medium, and that's one I've used light, medium with. So it's
Okay.
used, but so there's some white charcoal on there.
So you can see how easily this erases. And I just moved this edge in about 1 millimeter or so.
Yeah, Buddy's pointing out, I remember one of the lessons with the glass and the water and the other with marbles. Yeah, in both of those lessons, I used white charcoal and graphite. There's also a drawing of a rhinoceros. There's actually several of the lessons that are on the site that use a combination of media. Actually, that's one of my favorite combinations of media. I feel like I have a lot of control combining the white charcoal with graphite.
You know, my intention, because I did go to the art store today, was to get a whole pad of black paper because they have some there, but they were sealed up in plastic. How are you supposed to touch the paper?
Was it the
whole
paper?
No, it was a sketchbook, and the whole sketchbook was sealed in plastic. So I didn't buy it because, I mean, you got to touch the paper,
Right, yeah.
And same with a tube of paint. You gotta unscrew the lid before you buy it. So I used to work in an art store when I was
I don't
in
unscrew
college.
the lids to paint.
Oh,
but
I do.
Look at inspect the paper.
Yeah, I want to touch it and smear it off on something if I can in a store. If it's like paint that I've never used before, I want to kind of see its viscosity and things like that. So
I worked at a big box art store in college, and we always had
pads and paper around. Did you have?
We
some?
didn't.
Oh,
we
no.
had. I was going to say, like in the pen and marker section.
Yeah.
People would just come in and just write all over the price tags,
Right.
and the labels and stuff, and
That's why I worked at a mom and pop art store. So
Yeah.
it was not a chain, it was owned by
Right.
a family. And we had little scraps of paper and teeny slips of cut canvas
that's smart.
all over the place for people to test their materials out on.
Uh-huh.
And we felt like we sold more material because people would try stuff that they didn't come to buy and would buy it
That's
because of the
true.
way it felt
That's
on,
true.
you know, they would discover it right there in the store.
Well, we'd have people come in and write messages and stuff. I mean, they
Oh,
weren't
gosh.
they weren't testing out the pens. You know, they were just writing.
They were just
stuff.
making
They
a
were-
mess.
They were doing graffiti, illegal graffiti, not the pretty graffiti. Not illegal either, just the bad kind.
It irritating graffiti, like the kind on my desks at school. I know what kind of graffiti you're talking about. All right. I think I can get a little bit lighter with this value in the pepper. I got to be careful. You know, we got to compare what we're doing in the pepper shaker to the salt shaker.
And both of those shakers are really starting to pop a little bit. We're starting to see a little bit of reflection in there.
All right,
as you
great.
continue to layer.
And I think I am going to try to use the blending stump a little bit.
Yeah, I think you got time to do that. But
Yeah.
one thing I'll point out before you do that is just want everybody to notice that Ashley is changing the stroke that he's
Like the
using with the
direction.
pencil to create a more even
Oh, yeah.
application of the material and also a more smoother transition or gradation of value.
You mean changing in layers?
Yes.
So we call that blending with a pencil tip, different than smudging with the stump. But both of those techniques are meant to create a smoother application. You can't quite as smooth with blending out your pencil strokes as you can with the stump. But it's good to practice that to build up your values in layers in different directions, and then the stroke just sort of disappears.
And I'll also point out that he's also making sure that he's following in the direction of the form of the object too. So he's using cross contour lines to do so. So
You know, Matt, I'm glad you're here because sometimes I forget to even mention that stuff.
Well, yeah.
You know, out of habit, you just do it
Well, yeah, I
by
know. We
instinct and
naturally
forget to
do
mention
that,
that the first two layers that I used here followed the edges of that side.
Right.
You know, they are in agreement with that side.
And doing that simple thing, just, shading is what most people call it. You're developing the values, but you're not actually adding shade to it.
That's right. That's right.
But, just doing that, just making sure that your directional strokes are flowing with the form of the object makes a huge difference in creating the illusion of actual form and creating a more representational drawing.
You know, I had a teacher that never used the word shading. He always said render.
I try
Make a
to
line
avoid-
drawing and then render it. And now I realize it's because we're not always working with light to dark.
Yeah.
When we're painting or working on a black piece of paper, we're creating value, but not always with shadows. Here we're doing it with light.
Right. And those of you who are familiar with the channel here and the website probably have noticed that I also tend to avoid using the word shading. I
Yeah.
will use the word shading, but it's really not an accurate description of what's going on in the drawing.
You know, I started using the word shading when I started teaching out of pure laziness, just so I didn't have to, because
Right.
the kids all knew what shading was.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
rendering, I had to keep explaining that.
Yeah.
So I say shading probably more than I probably should.
Well, I actually learned that rendering actually refers to getting the eraser involved in
Oh,
the
yeah,
manipulation
yeah.
process.
Ah, that's true.
And true rendering is a process of adding and subtracting.
And in
which,
in
that's what you
painting,
do.
it would be going just back and forth from lighter colors and values to darker color and values.
And that's
instead
what
of having an
you're
eraser.
doing here. You're using the eraser. You have plans to go in and pull out some of the shadows instead of pulling
That's
out the
right.
highlights.
That's right. I've got big plans. We'll see how they come out.
Okay, Henrique. I think it's Henrique. Henrique, maybe. Are the effects that you're doing with the white charcoal pencil could be done with a white pastel pencil? And the answer to that is absolutely.
Yeah, they're very similar. The white pastel pencil will probably give you a little more forgiveness too. It'll smear and smudge a little bit easier.
Yeah, the pastel, white pastel pencil it's going to be harder to erase though. So
That's
just
true.
keep that in mind. Buddy asked, have you tried any other colored charcoal? And I think we had somebody ask us that a few weeks ago about colored charcoal.
No, I have not ever used any of the
Yeah.
colored charcoal.
Yeah, I haven't either. Although it sounds interesting,
Still.
but it also sounds very similar to pastels. So,
I guess it's going to feel just a little different, and
Yeah.
maybe there's a personal preference there.
And I guess you have the advantage of being able to erase a little bit easier, as we kind of just discussed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got some smear marks. I don't use a paper towel under my hand, so I have to clean up my page sometimes. It's got about 15 minutes left. I think I'll break out the stump for a little bit in the eraser next, and then we'll make adjustments from there.
Now, I'm curious, are you going to indicate any kind of cast shadow here by lightening up some of the
Yeah,
areas on the
and
surface,
since I've got the stump, I thought I'd get it a little bit muddy.
Yeah.
And then see if we can do it with the stump.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
add
that's
a
a
little
good
bit.
idea.
We got a little reflection right down here on the surface. It's a slight the surface I photographed these on has a slight sheen to it. Matt, you'll appreciate this. The background in ground plane is a big sheet of scratch board,
Oh, okay.
which is another media that's black and you make white marks on. And while I
Right.
was photographing these, I thought maybe I should use that piece of scratch board and actually scratch these out.
You know, that would be a good.
And I might. I'm fast on Scratchboard.
Yeah.
You know, I
am-
use it as a sketchy material. So I might try that next
I'm
season.
painfully slow with scratch. I'm painfully slow with anything that kind of gets. But that's a good idea. I've been thinking about the next live lesson series, and I was kind of waffling and thinking about maybe doing a pastel lesson series. But Scratchboard might be good. We haven't done Scratchboard in a long time, and I don't think I've ever done a
it is
lesson
the greatest medium.
where we've colored Scratchboard with like watercolor. Which
Oh no,
might be cool, too.
I've never actually done that. So that would be a lot of fun.
For those of you who don't know, Scratchboard is a medium where you basically remove ink from a surface, revealing a colored underlayment, usually white.
And the ink is totally dry, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's,
The ink is totally dry. It's not wet ink.
Right.
It's kind of if you ever used crayons growing up where you would color with different colors and then cover the whole thing with black, a black crayon, and then scratched out with like a paper clip or something. That's similar. That's a similar process. So.
And some people have used scratch paper. It's the same thing. Scratch paper is like a really cheap version. And sometimes it has like rainbow colors underneath it that, for kids to kind of play with. But it is still based on the same concept. You're still etching out your marks.
Okay, Teresa asked, what are good brands for electric erasers? And I don't necessarily think that there's a great discrepancy in brand names. The electric erasers that Ashley and I both have are both kind of no-name brand electric erasers.
Actually, I think they're the same eraser, and the brand name has changed on it
Oh,
from
really?
the one you
What
bought.
does yours say on it?
This is Curate plus color.
Keurig,
Yeah, Curate plus color. And
Yeah.
I think yours is Artesian.
Artisan,
Artisan, right?
like with dashes.
It's
in it.
the exact same thing.
It is
and
exactly
it's
the
just
same
it's just been rebranded, or different companies are buying these from the same
Right.
manufacturer.
This is probably an
Putting their
example of a white label product.
Right,
That's
there you go.
Produced maybe in a country that's foreign to the United States, and different brands are just putting their logo on there and selling them. So, it's basically a battery with an eraser at the end that vibrates. You can hear
But they
mine
come with
there.
two different size erasers. These really, really tiny ones, and then one that's about twice or maybe 3 times the diameter of this one. So it gives you a little bit of variety. I think it was like $7, and I've got about 15 or 20 eraser replacements that came with it. So it may turn out to be the best value purchase I've ever made.
Orion Nebula asks, I would love a sketchy or live lesson with pastel pencils. And if you do have access to our live lessons, then that means you're a member. You might want to check out some of our past live lesson series. I've used pastel pencils quite a bit, and there are a lot of lessons that use pastels and pastel pencils on the site as well. So you can check those out. Getting sketchy is kind of a quicker kind of deal. In 45 minutes, it would be hard to develop a pastel pencil drawing in that period of time. I'm not saying it's not possible. So it'd probably be better suited for a longer lesson, like a live lesson series, or just one of the standalone lessons that I create here on YouTube. But yeah, go check those out when you get a chance. Just go to the site, click on the lessons, and then choose drawing, and then choose pastels, and then you'll be able to scroll through that. And a lot of the lessons that just look like they're just pastels that were used, actually pastel pencils were used with them as well. Let's see. Simon asked, do I need to use photos or pause a video to draw poses? It sounds like maybe you're talking about drawing people. I'm wondering if you can clarify that. I can.
It sounds like it.
Better answer that question. And Orion Nebby also asked, and curious about seeing the scratch board in action. Again, if you go to the website, there is an entire live lesson series where I draw a cat using Scratchboard. And with Scratchboard, I'm basically scratching out the light areas. And it's kind of like pen and ink, but with white. So you scratch away the material from the surface, and you're scratching away mostly using lines. So you kind of have to think about how you're going to use line, just white line instead of a black line in order to create the lighter values. So again, go back and check out the site. I think there's 2 lessons on the site using Scratchboard at this point. Let's see. Ernest again asks what paper you're using. And
It is the Colorline paper by Canson.
So Colorline paper by Canson. Margaret asked, do you make Scratchboard or buy it?
You can make Scratchboard. I actually had a student that specialized in making her own Scratchboard as part of her AP concentration. And we went through quite a few different formula to do that. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's
just
not
buy
easy.
it. Just buy it.
Yeah, I would suggest buying it. And in fact,
The problem is inconsistency within the same piece of Scratchboard that you've made. So, all right. So we've got about 8 minutes left. So I'm of course, not done with the salt and pepper shakers. I'm just trying to get a little bit of value out here in the background. And I did not realize how dirty. Oh yeah, there we go.
so I went back there in my papers and found some of the Scratchboard that I've ordered before. This is pretty inexpensive Scratchboard, and it's pretty consistent, pretty easy to use.
You can see how it does have a sheen to it a little bit. It's heavy like poster board, and the backing is actually the surface that you would see when you scratch through this black material, or the black top layer.
And you use sharp tools. There are special tools for Scratchboard, but you can also use an X-Acto knife or something like that. And Julie just continues here. Does Scratchboard come in different colors and you can choose? There are some brands out there that make like a metallic surface. Like
and gold. You can get gold
silver
underneath it. That's kind of cool.
So when you scratch away
gimmicky.
the black, you're seeing actually the gold color or the silver color instead of white.
And then when you walk past it, it glints at you. It's interactive art. So
I saw a pretty good Scratchboard etching, which they're called etchings. A Scratchboard etching of a lion that was done with the gold surface. I think you're really limited to what you can do with the gold and metallic surface.
Right. You need to pick a subject that the gold or the silver says something about the subject. And since a lion is the king of the jungle, right? He's regal. The gold makes sense, and also their color.
Let's see.
You could do an image of bars of gold. That would be perfect.
That would be a quick one. Let's see. Ree asked, what black paper brands do you recommend? If for just pure black paper that's inexpensive and is pretty high quality, I would recommend the Artigan paper by Strathmore.
Yeah, I think
it comes in
Strathmore's
pads.
good.
It's pretty inexpensive. It's a relatively smooth surface. It works great for this kind of stuff. Ashley's using a paper by Canson, and all of Canson's papers. I've never come across a paper that Canson has made that is a low quality.
That's just bad,
paper.
right? It's very stable choice.
Strathmore, like I said, you really can't go wrong with Strathmore paper either.
Okay. So, got a few really strong spots.
And Ashley is really waiting on that eraser. He is really putting it off.
The electric eraser.
The electric eraser.
It's our grand finale, I
It
guess.
is the grand finale. It's like putting in the highlights. But, using that blending stump really made things smoother.
Yeah,
and
I
the
think it really
gradation's a lot
because the
better.
drawing is so small, the tooth was just too strong.
Yeah.
And in a larger drawing, I don't think it would have felt that way. So,
agree.
we make plans and then we change our plans, and by responding to our art, it's not a bad thing.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, I tore the paper. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't tear the paper. Now, watch me tear the paper. Watch me tear the paper.
You're not going to tear paper with that eraser. You'd have to really get after it
Yeah.
to tear the paper, I would think. Now, with watercolor paper or some of the softer cotton papers, you might actually have a chance at tearing it up.
Oh,
In this
yeah,
case, I don't think
definitely.
so. Let's see. Julie Glenn actually says, I actually have two of those, but they're called engraving art. One is silver and the other copper. Yeah, that process is still scratchboard. I think I know what you're talking about, and they probably call it engraving, which is essentially what you're doing. But if you're removing the ink and revealing a color underneath, it's the same thing. Scratchboard. Engraving is actually a printmaking process in which
I've started calling crayon etchings crayon engravings.
Oh, have you?
Because an etching
An
is a
etching
chemical
uses acid,
process.
right,
It's a
yeah.
chemical process, not a physical one. So I'm a little bit. I would lean toward calling them engravings too.
right.
For that, even though we're not making multiples. It's not actually printmaking.
That makes
so-
more sense.
Yeah.
Engraving does make more sense. And actual printmaking engraving is an intaglio process where a plate is used and a sharp tool is used to cut into the plate. Then ink is added to the surface and then removed, and ink stays inside of those grooves. And then you use a slightly dampened sheet of paper, run it through a press, and due to capillary action, the ink is pulled onto that surface, creating a print. Okay, this is an interesting question. Christine asked, what about trying to make the back shaker a little blurry like it is in the photo reference? How do you feel about that?
I'll just smear it with my finger. No, I like that idea. I
well,
like that idea.
And I'm just going to caution you on something. That will make your drawing look a little bit more like a photograph, potentially.
And more spatial,
Or-
maybe. Could
or
be.
it could make it look like a mess. Because, some things that we see in a photo make sense because it's a photo. And then
That's
when
true.
we try to do it in a drawing, it doesn't make sense.
And the
because
whole blurry foreground, blurry background, that's photographer's bread and butter right there.
So I would be careful with that. It works really well when you have a subject that's really close up and you have a very blurry background. I think they refer to that as bokeh in photography.
Yeah.
That works in a drawing or painting when you can make the background really blurry. But with two objects like this, where you have one that's literally inches from the other one, and it's blurry just because the photographer, who is Ashley, zoomed in really close to the salt shaker and put one of the shakers in focus, and the other one is a little blurry. It works great for the photo, but for a drawing like this, I'm not sure that it would translate very well if that second shaker was a little blurry. It might just look messy.
Speaking of mess, I'm just trying to clean up some of my blacker areas now. So we got 2 minutes left on the clock.
And remember, the clock is a suggestion.
Where should we go? Where
Ernest
should
says,
we go?
would you do a lesson on engraving? And I would love to do a lesson on engraving, but engraving does require a printing press. And it's...
We would have to go on location.
Yeah, we'd have to go
I mean,
on
I have
location
access
to
to
do
a
that, yeah.
huge, beautiful printing press, but it is not movable. I mean, it's been moved. It took me and 4 other guys, and we almost died.
Was it the
No,
109?
it's brand new.
Oh, brand new.
It's in room 108. It came from a different school. It wasn't being used. And I think that the maintenance department, when they saw what they had to move, I mean, they put it, it's this one
So you
item.
haven't used it yet?
Not yet. Not
So
yet.
you could do
In fact, I'll be
lithography with that
I'll be
big
setting
press,
it. It's
probably.
big enough. Yeah. I want to get an 18 by 24 inch linoleum block and carve that. I mean, it is big. It is big.
One
So
of my professors in college.
I'll be setting it up next week. If you want to come videotape it, we could talk about how to set up a big press.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
One of my professors in college did these huge linoleum block prints. Huge, like 2 feet by 2 feet.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Big ones.
And they were all square, and it was he was playing with the corners.
Huh.
I can't remember exactly what they all looked like.
Was it like
They kinda had
a design? He made a design out of the block?
It was almost like looking down into a room from a corner.
Yeah.
You understand? Kind of like one perspective.
All right.
Yeah, that might not be a bad idea. We might need to do a
That's the sound you
lesson
get when you get to 17 seconds.
We can do lessons on all that stuff.
Yeah.
Using that press. I had no idea you had access to that press. I remember the old smaller presses.
It is so big. In fact, me and a colleague of mine are going to try to add some casters to it so we can move it around because it is so big and heavy.
Now the one in 108, I didn't mean to turn that off. Let's turn that off.
That one is the 100-year-old press.
Yeah, that was a little bent, but I still was able to.
No, that printing press is still great. It's
still great,
it's
still
100 years old.
Yeah.
The bed is bent slightly, and it still makes great.
Right.
It still makes great prints. So
I remember the bed being bent slightly. There's photos.
They
of
just
that
don't
press
make
on the
things like they
stage.
did during the industrial age. You know, after the nuclear war, the only thing left is going to be cockroaches and that printing press.
Well, the drawing looks great.
Thank you. Thank you.
It really came together there, and I hope everybody saw. I just want to point something else out, and that is there were stages in the drawing early on where you might have been asking yourself, "What is going on?" And that is a normal process.
Sure.
That's a normal part of the process. And the problem is a lot of folks who are new to drawing, they'll
Trying to
get
get
to
it-
that stage and
yeah.
they'll get frustrated. They think, I'm doing something wrong. I'm going to stop. And you have to work
I
through
liken
those
it to
stages.
middle school, Matt.
Yeah.
You know how kids go through this awkward stage where their hands and their ears get real big and their body hadn't caught up yet, but then everything turns out okay in high school?
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. The awkward stage. Drawings go through an awkward stage too. You know, they're little babies. You know, we put 2 lines on there and it was like an infant. And it's so cute when we start putting our little cubes on there. Then it starts to get a little bit ugly sometimes. And we got to respond to that just like we respond to our middle schoolers and help them out. So I like it.
That's a good analogy.
It's the
That's
ugly
really good.
stage, and it just hasn't grown up yet. And a lot of artists don't like people to see their work in progress because they know there's the ugly stage, and they just don't want to hear somebody say, you know, this looks weird or that looks flat, because they know it does. They're working on that. They're just haven't gotten to address those issues just yet. So I'm pretty happy. With the salt and pepper shaker, you know, for a 45-minute drawing.
Oh, yeah,
It looks
absolutely.
pretty good. You know, I can see some things that I would like to continue to work on and change. But if I were going to, you know, this is a kind of a complicated subject. The values really sort of meander and mingle into one another. So if I were going to make a painting of a subject like this, I think it would be beneficial to make a drawing first. You know, and I don't always do that. But for some subject matter, I do. Promote the idea of working with it a little bit in your sketchbook before you actually go on to make like a larger, more technical and finished piece. You know, really wrap your brain around it.
And you're continuing to make marks on the surface, which is totally okay. But that goes along with what I'm going to say here, and that is, if you wanted to, you could continue pushing and pulling the charcoal here and really bring this drawing to a very high level of realism. Just by continuing to work the charcoal
You're
with
right.
the eraser.
Photorealism is always possible. You know, it's just a matter of how long you want to stick with it.
Right.
So we could stick with this another 45 minutes. Well, next week I'll be drawing a salt and pepper shaker. So bring your drawing and no, I'm just kidding. And we'll finish it. But no, you could just, the longer you stick with it, the more you can get into those smaller and smaller nuances. And that's really what I'm talking about. I mean, there's some stuff going on right in here that I would love to dig down into. But to be honest, I don't have my glasses, and I would have to put my whole head right in front of the camera to get down there and work on that. And now's not the time. So yeah, there's always, we simplify when we start a drawing, and then we decide how far into the world of complexity we want to go. And so there's still some complexity in here and in the metal parts that I would have liked to continue to explore.
And that's really good that you can lean in close and still see things. When I lean in close, I see just blurriness.
Well, if I get too close, it turns blurry again. There's a zone. It's right about here between these two hands that things look really good. Any closer, I need reading glasses. Any farther away, I needed glasses I lost on vacation. So
well, next Wednesday, I'm taking my oldest daughter and moving her into college for the first time. And they sent a postcard today. The school did. And I was trying to read the postcard, and I could only read it if I had it almost 2 feet away from my face. And then at that point, the text was so small. But anyway.
It's happening to all of us.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Thank you guys for joining us this evening. I didn't at the start of the broadcast say where everybody was from, but again, it was from all over the world. So thank you guys from all over the world, wherever you are, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching the recorded version on YouTube here. Of course, thanks for joining us. And is there anything else you want to say about the drawing before we switch over to these?
No, I don't think so. We're going to do a bonus episode next week, and so we'll have all our drawings out, and there'll probably be more to say when we get there.
Absolutely. All right, we'll go ahead and switch out over here then. All right, thanks again for sticking around for the last hour. If you did, I think it's been an hour. Yeah, it's been over an hour. I think Ashley did a fantastic job with the drawing.
Thank you.
Now he's ready to transition over to a painting frame of mine.
That's right.
We're going to be heading over to the virtual instructor, and we're going to be starting the live lesson at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are a member, then we look forward to joining you over there if you do decide to go that route. Remember, if you're new to the channel or haven't done so yet, make sure that you subscribe. There's a link to our membership program below this video if you want to check it out, and also a link to check out 3 videos and ebooks for free. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign out for this evening. But first, Ashley, you have anything else to add?
I was just reading the chat, and it looks like I had some of my family watching, and they've given me the thumbs up on my drawing, so I can go home with my head held high. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and lots of thank yous. Looks great. Amazing work.
This one was a lot of fun. And I know I put off working with the black paper for several weeks. I kept promising and saying we were going to do that and showing up with white paper. So if you had your black paper ready to go for the last month, thanks for being patient with me.
Yeah, it was a good one to kind of end this season. Remember, next week we're going to have a bonus episode where we talk about the artworks that we created this season.
And answer more of your questions. So bring your art questions.
Yeah. I created 5. Ashley created 5. We're going to take a few weeks off after that, and then we'll be back for Getting Sketchy. Of course, we're not going to take the live lessons off. And also, I will be posting other videos on YouTube in between that as well. So, so it's not the end of the world here. So, all right. With that, we're going to go ahead and sign out for real now. Good night, everybody.